I'd like to welcome on stage Pavan Chitta. He's all of 17 years and he has this immense list of contributions and achievements to his name. He's been the Karnataka state team player for football under 17. He's been a Karnataka state team player for basketball under 15. He is school captain of the Greenwood High School in Bangalore. He's played for the Bangalore Football Club under 19. He's an all-India IGCSE topper at the 10th grade. He volunteers teaching sports, math and English at government schools, and he's content author at educatezilla.com. I think even if we try to do what we've done in the last 30, 40 years of our life, we couldn't match this list. So welcome guys, welcome Pavan Chitta.
So good morning everyone. Thank you for that generous introduction. I must say it's such a pleasure and privilege to be here in front of such accomplished people. So you're probably still wondering why a 17-year-old is here today, so I'll get straight into it by saying that I started coding in Swift, the relatively new iOS language, just a couple years ago, because just as any other teenage kid, I thought it was simple. I just create the next Flappy Bird, put it on the App Store, and get famous. But after I created my first app, which entailed balloons going up and down and swords left to right, it wasn't exactly as satisfying as I thought it would be. Nevertheless, the knowledge I attained in creating such apps gave me the ability to look at the problems I saw every day around me with the question, can an app solve this? And today I'd like to share with you one such idea that I came up with and worked upon over the past year. So the story all started last December when my family friend visited from the US, and she kept telling me how much she wanted to go to this restaurant, Dialogue in the Dark, because it wasn't there in the US but was there in Bangalore where I live. Now, despite the fact that I lived only a couple kilometers from this restaurant, I had still not visited this restaurant, so I thought why not, and we gave it a shot. Now, the idea of this restaurant is to immerse the diner in complete darkness and have them not only engage in conversation in that darkness, but actually walk around, have them even engage in conversation in that darkness. And each family would be given a guide to help them navigate themselves through that experience. But I must admit, initially I thought there would have to be some sort of light, because how else would an individual actually dine in that darkness? But boy was I wrong as we entered into pitch blackness. The entire experience was almost like a roller coaster, in the sense that while it was exhilarating, it was also frightening, because I couldn't even see my own hands, much less anything that was in front of me. But while I was trying to get accustomed to this surroundings, or lack thereof, my guide was actually telling me how much I had eaten, what to do, where to go, and this surprised my friend and I, as we assumed that he must be wearing some sort of night vision goggles, right? But keeping with this roller coaster metaphor, I think the real drop in our experience came when we exited the restaurant, to find that my guide, and actually every guide at that restaurant, was visually impaired. And I think it was in that moment that I realized that, ironic as it was, this whole experience where I couldn't see anything was in fact eye-opening, because I finally realized for the first time to get an idea of the real difficulties that visually impaired people face on a day-to-day basis. Now, while a handful of them are definitely independent and extremely successful, we must admit that a majority of them still face several problems, be it small day-to-day problems or even such large problems as finding employment and making a living. So after pondering over this situation for some time, I actually revisited the restaurant after a couple months and spoke with some of the visually impaired employees there to get a better understanding of the problems they face. And I was actually extremely impressed to find out that how well versed they were with using technology and their smartphones by using voice-over options so as to navigate their phones using their voice and touch. In fact, one user even told me how he still uses IBM screen reader to actually navigate his computer. So this whole notion that such visually impaired people were actually well versed with technology furthered my drive to actually come up with some sort of a technological solution perhaps to the problems that they still face. So to give you an idea of some of those problems, from the feedback that I got, one such problem was what I like to call the proximity challenge, in which one of the relatively independent visually impaired employees there told me about how when he tried to actually call a cab to take him to places, there would be the problem that even when the cab actually comes to his GPS location, the final connection in which he actually tries to get into the cab and the driver notices where he is would be difficult, and that final, even despite the fact that they would be just a couple meters apart, there was still that lack of final connection. Another problem is that of counting money. Now, in Indian currency, the notes are of different sizes, so it becomes a little easier. But in other currencies, when the notes are of the same size, because there's no braille or anything like that on them, if visually impaired persons want to become more independent, it becomes difficult to distinguish between those kind of notes. So after looking at such problems, and actually many more, I started realizing that there was potential to solve such problems if we could actually figure out some sort of image manipulation or image processing to actually be useful for such purposes. So then I started exploring different technologies, and I started by exploring OpenCV to see if I can actually program using such image processing libraries in order to actually detect objects from images. But after I started looking into that, I figured out that I would really have the basics and it would be really tedious for me. But the real breakthrough actually came when I found out that these cognitive APIs, such as visual recognition, already existed and could in fact do much of what I wanted. So I didn't have to actually start from scratch, but could in fact build upon those APIs. So after that, I started looking at how can I implement those APIs. And initially I had an old Raspberry Pi and I thought maybe I could use the camera module to bring that to life. But then I found out that I'd have to use a sound module, a battery pack, so even that would become a little less accessible and mobile. So finally I ended up just sticking with a mobile device and the inbuilt camera to see if I could create some sort of application wherein I could integrate that with the visual recognition or other cognitive APIs that already existed. So that is essentially how my Be My Guide application really started. And it is evolved with only one goal in mind, and that is to help visually impaired people be aware of their surroundings and help them actually get this notion of vision through visualization in order for them to become more independent. So because no single API actually provides all the functions that I required, I evaluated several different APIs and extracted those that were useful to me. And since this is an IBM conference, I thought I'd share my experience with some of the Watson services. So I found in particular that the Watson, under Watson Visual Recognition, the custom classifier service was particularly useful because it allows one to actually train the classifier to detect particular objects of interest. Now, creating the custom classifier was actually relatively simple. The only time-taking task was actually uploading various images for the positive results. And on a whole, I feel that this entire custom classifier seems to show a lot of potential, and it constitutes a unique function that I couldn't find in any other provider. And to give you an example, I created one such feature called Check My Money in my application in order to try and solve that counting money problem, in which I actually uploaded a bunch of different pictures for different notes, such as 10 rupees, 100 rupees, or even in dollars, under these subclasses under the custom classifier, so that whenever the user actually takes an image, perhaps of a note, to find out what value that note is, whatever subclass is detected under that will be read out by the application. So apart from that, I also used Watson face detection, which involves gender recognition and age recognition, that gave me good results. But while emotion is not yet available with Watson, I extracted that from other APIs. And on a whole, I basically took the results with highest confidence from different APIs and consolidated them for accuracy. In other features, I also used the Watson speech-to-text, text-to-speech, as well as the IBM Weather Underground in order to give weather information based on geolocation. But on a whole, commenting on my entire experience, I feel that the notion of actually using Watson in order to help you in iOS development was ultimately really simple because it was just a three-step process. Register yourself on Bluemix, get your services and credentials, and then download the iOS SDK from GitHub. And while I only used a small amount of resources and small amount of services, there's still a plethora of different resources available, and I'm excited by the potential that those show for solving other problems that we face on a day-to-day basis. And while I said that I was initially not too accustomed with the whole Bluemix service, I was actually, I found it really easy to find available resources, because there's so much documentation on Bluemix, on GitHub, and even when I had some further problems, I even posted some queries on DeveloperWorks and got some replies within 24 hours. So I feel that this whole environment was so conducive, and I felt empowered to actually come up with a working model of my entire app. And so before we get any further, I thought I'd actually run you through the features of my app, or through some demos that I'd actually show you. So the first feature of my app, which is called My Vision, is the basic feature. It uses the visual recognition service under Watson and various other APIs. So I'll just give you a few use cases of this feature. While I'm sure it can actually be used for almost everything, I'll just show you a small demo with some use cases. So can we play the first demo?
Point the device towards the object and press the button at the bottom right. Please wait for results. I see a logo or a sign indicating the Kane Chronicles. I also see some text saying from the creator of best-selling Percy Jackson Squeeze the now a major film Percy Jackson the Demigod Files. Please wait for results. I see a female of age between 35 and 44 who looks happy. Please wait for results. I see a logo or a sign indicating Tropicana. I also see some text saying is free Tropicana slice Alfonso 200 milliliters worth 20 rupee. Please wait for results. I see color, blue.
So from that, you can see that this is just a basic feature, but just imagine the potential that such a feature can have in terms of making visually impaired people more independent. They don't have to ask other individuals for, perhaps if they wanted to go shopping or even cook, what a label says, or if they wanted to wear something that looks nice, what color of the dress that they should wear, or clothes. So that was a basic feature. But then after thinking about that, I started going even further to see, can I actually show a user what their immediate environment is? And that's when I came up with the What's Around Me feature, wherein the user simply rotates the device to actually give them an idea of what's to their front, what's to their left, and their immediate surrounding, so that they can actually have that experience of vision through visualization. So I'll now show you the second demo.
Scanning started. Slowly rotate the device around you. Scanning stopped.
Scanning started. Slowly rotate the device around you. Scanning stopped. Behind you I see structure room, a painting of a large mirror. In front of you, I see furniture shelf, a desk with a flat screen TV. To your left I see structure room, a living room with a couch and a chair. To your right I see structure interior design, a living room with a large window.
So while there still is work that needs to be done, this whole idea of getting them to be aware of their surroundings is definitely possible through such a feature. So they can actually get that experience of, that ideal experience of knowing what really is around them in their immediate environment. But when I was looking at that, I then went further to think that, is there a possibility of really solving some practical problems that they face? And that's when I came up with the Find My Stuff feature, which is in beta phase right now. But the whole idea is to actually, if I can scan around me to find out what's in those locations, could I in fact input through my voice what I want to find and actually have the app really tell me where it is so I can locate that object. So I'll show you again a small demo of this feature as well.
What are you looking for? Speak after the beep.
Computer.
If you are looking for computer, start the scan. If not, try again. Scanning started. Slowly rotate the device around you. Scanning stopped. I see computer at 45.0 degrees to your left.
Which is approximately right, considering I was looking at the shelf originally.
So if you imagine this from a visually impaired person's perspective, you'll see that there is a lot of potential in this as well to really solve practical problems. And remember the underlying idea of helping them become more independent so they don't have to rely on others, and how this can in fact help them in other problems such as really getting employment, making a living in those sort of areas. But finally, I'd like to also show you that this check my money feature and how I was talking about how you can actually use the custom classifiers under Watson to actually differentiate between different objects, and in this case, the notes.
₹100. 20 rupees. 10 rupees.
So what essentially happened there is, after taking the image, it went in looking at the subclasses to associate that particular note with anything that's in the subclasses to see if it can make that association, and then read out the actual classifier, the subclass name. So now you've seen a bunch of different features. So I kept telling you about how the underlying idea of this app is to help visually impaired people become more independent. So finally, as a final video, I want to show you how we can actually put these all together and see one use case of wherein a visually impaired person can actually become really more independent. And in the video, I actually have a friend, Faisal, who I met through this whole experience, and he was kind enough to actually test out the app while he actually had his shopping experience.
You're right, I see supermarket convenience store. Scanning started. Slowly rotate the device around you. Scanning stop. In front of you, I see food produced with lots of fruit. Behind you I see a sign indicating Maggie. I also see some text saying Lay's. I see a logo or a sign indicating Bernvita. ₹500.
So essentially there, I've looked at how... Thank you. So through all that, I've just been looking at and becoming excited about the potential that cognitive services can actually have in terms of solving problems that really have a social element. And after all that, I'd just like to conclude by saying that just as the visually impaired guides at Dialogue in the Dark guided me in the darkness at that restaurant, I tried creating this app in the hope of guiding them in their darkness. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.